So you really thought we couldn't make it, huh? You really thought we wouldn't be here. Well, today, after a pretty long hiatus, we're happy to say that this is episode 2 of the Con Squared podcast. So in an ideal world, our dream is to put out an episode every single week. And that is what we're going to try to do from here on out.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe we'll miss a week here and there if we're traveling or we have work, but we're really going to do our best to take this podcast more seriously because y'all showed some love on that first episode, surprisingly.
That was cool. All the people who's related to like our experiences or our culture background, it was cool to see.
Yeah, because I feel like y'all don't get to see this side of us that often. I feel
the
like
funny, goofy side.
Yeah, or the conversational side, because I feel like you see us as teachers, and I feel like a lot of my videos are just
wooden desk.
Yeah, essentially.
It's your wooden desk and it's my face and they're
people just think that we're just the same person.
And now there's like the separation happening here. It's like blowing people's minds.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about the college application process. In the first episode, we talked about our high school experiences. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the journey to college. And then we're thinking that in the next episode, we'll talk about college itself and how to survive college.
And then beyond that, the podcast ends. So you get 3 episodes in total. So in the penultimate, I hope you guys enjoy.
And then, of course, before we begin, I want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, me, Scholar OS. Download it now. It's my Notion template that I worked very hard to make. You can not only use it to organize your life, but also your goals. And Mahad's not getting a cut of this, but download it now. Link in the description. Link in the description now.
Can I get a free copy?
Nope.
Okay. Well, with that, let's talk about College App 101. Gohar, where do we start?
So it
all starts when my mom... Yep.
Continue. No, what were you about to say?
So I always knew I was born... with just a mission in mind.
Where's he taking this?
Just, how sometimes you just know what you're destined to do, like from the get go. I just knew. Like I woke up with like a Harvard sweater. Like I wore a Harvard sweater out of the womb, and I knew since that day I was gonna end up there.
I feel like you didn't even know what Harvard was until you were like a senior in high school.
Yeah.
To be honest, this guy didn't think much about the college admissions process until later.
No, I did. I didn't think about it until you were in the college admissions process, at which point I was like, oh, Ivy League. And then I forgot about it when you went to college. And then summer before my senior year, I was like, oh, college application process.
Yeah. I think you had a healthier relationship with the college admissions process, which was nice.
Some say healthier, some say I was like neglecting it, but whatever buzzword you want to use. But no, I still thought about it, and extracurriculars and everything I'd been building up, obviously, because you're not going to get in without doing anything. We'll get into all that later. But first off, let's start with, I guess...
I'm going to cut you off right there. Before we even begin, before we even talk about the first component on the college application, I just want to do like 30 seconds of disclaimers.
Oh, okay.
So what we're going to talk about today, these are our opinions about college admissions. If you want an objective guide on how to apply to college, I already made a video about that on my channel. It's like a half-hour video.
All his own things.
This is different. This is our just own take on how to get into an elite school or how to get into like a top college. This is not how to apply to college because we've already made a bunch of content about that. And with that said, we are not admissions officers. To be fair, I have enrolled in a college admissions course and I'm an associate member of the IECA. So I do have some credentials under my belt, but we have not been an admissions office. Though to be fair, we have looked at hundreds, if not thousands of college essays. Our company, Next Admit, has looked at tens of thousands. And so...
3 plugs in like 2 minutes, my guy. That's how you do it. That's YouTube. That's a seasoned YouTuber right there.
No, but I just want to give some context because we have seen and lived through this process vicariously through thousands of students so often that we have observed some very clear patterns that we want to share with you here today. And some of the stuff we say is going to seem a little bit obvious, but then as we go along, we're going to also just give our own unique take on things.
Yeah, and this episode isn't even about elite college admissions, right? We're just going to give you our best tips to apply to college to the best of your ability, right? And you could apply that to whatever range of schools you want to. But these are, these tips are for anybody planning to apply to college.
Yeah, that's also a good point. Okay, so where do you want to start off the conversation?
GPA. Yeah, I think we talk about grades. A lot of people have misconceptions about one, how important they are. Two, whether some people think they're not important. Three, what is a strong GPA, what isn't a strong GPA comparison. Just all about grades.
Your transcript needs to prove to colleges that you are able to handle the rigor of their curriculum. And so that leads me to my first question, Mahad.
Okay.
How important is your GPA?
Ooh, GPA is very important. Your grades are obviously very important. If you're aiming for a top school, transparently, you want to aim for all A's, right? You want to aim for a 4.0. Not to say you can't get in without a 4.0, but you want to aim for a 4.0, right? But I think students tend to make a mistake where they are obsessing over the number itself, right? The 4.5, the 5.6, but not enough on the context in which that number arose. But an A in an AP class is very different from an A in a college prep course, right? And that brings me to my next point, which is course rigor. Course rigor is extremely important. I'm not going to say it's more important than your GPA, but your GPA and course rigor go hand in hand.
Yeah. There's also like a tricky balance here because students often wonder, is it better to take an AP course if I get an A minus versus an honors course in which I can get an A plus? And no college admissions officer is going to give you a definitive answer on this. What I will say is that if you think the difference is going to be marginal in terms of just like a sign difference, then always take the harder course.
Yeah.
If you fundamentally think that a class is going to be more difficult for you, like the AP version, and then you might be a whole letter grade lower, then maybe opt for the honors course. But truthfully, under any circumstance, just please try your best to take the highest, most difficult version of a course that you can take. Because when you're applying to college, you have to go under the assumption that everyone else applying has already taken all those AP courses, is already enrolled in the hardest classes their school offers. And that's sort of the unfortunate truth about the playing field. The one exception, though, is if your school doesn't offer these courses. And that's another very, very popular question that I'm sure you also get like all the time.
Yeah, I have a lot of DMs, saying, Mahad, what do I do if my school only offers 3 AP classes? What do I do if my school offers no AP classes? To which I always say, my famous line, I'm a little annoyed of saying it, is that colleges will review your application in your school's context. Meaning, if your school doesn't offer any AP classes, you won't be penalized for not taking any AP classes. I will say, though, there are routes to taking AP level classes on your own, whether taking an AP class online, doing dual enrollment, or at that point, you just want to stack up on honors classes. But don't stress too much if your school doesn't offer as many APs as someone else because context matters in everything.
And then while we're also on this point, I just want to quickly mention that rank isn't as important as you think it is. A lot of students, I think, assume that being number one offers this crazy advantage in the admissions process. Truthfully, the number, like your rank, as long as you're in the top 10%, from what I've at least seen, you should be fine.
Because let's think about it, right? If you go to a small school, 100 people, and everyone's getting like C's, right? And like you're number one there with a B. You're valedictorian, but at the end of the day, your GPA still isn't on par with the other applicants applying, right? So rank, I was valedictorian, and it worked out for me. But rank, as you said, isn't end all be all if you're number 1 versus 2 versus 3.
And then I think when it comes to academics, GPA, your transcript, that's obviously the biggest component.
I think even Yale on their website mentions how it's pretty explicitly your transcript, your GPA is like your magnum opus, is like your high school defining. That is the most important thing they look for.
And there's something else that Yale also mentioned on their website, if I'm not mistaken, and which leads into my next point, which is your standardized test scores. Some students with a lower GPA wonder if a high test score on the SAT or the ACT can compensate for a slightly lower GPA. And from what I have read, the general consensus is that
No.
yeah, like a high GPA could somewhat compensate for a lower standardized test score, but it can't work the other way around. Even if you get, a super high score on the SAT, if there are red flags in your transcript, that score won't erase them.
Yeah, and it makes intuitive sense, right? Your GPA is built up over 3 years when you submitted to apply versus an SAT taken in one sitting. It makes sense because, if you get a low SAT score but you have all A's over 3 years, maybe you're just a bad test taker. It's more indicative of, you're a strong student still versus like a 1560 and all, C's. That might be indicative of I don't know, lazy behavior over 3 years. I'm not going to say that, but like, if you get a 1560, you're a pretty smart person. So like, what's up with the GPA? You know what I mean? But I do want to bring it back to one quick point about GPA. If you see someone with like a 9.0 GPA or a crazy high number, that also doesn't necessarily mean anything, because every school, what do they do, Gohar?
What is it? Weighs GPAs, calculates
They
GPAs
calculate.
differently. Yeah.
And our school, we were on the 100-point system, which I actually didn't realize until I went to college. That was a very difficult system, because most of my friends were on a 4.0 system, right? Where any grade between 96 to 100 is just an A, so 4.0. Us, like, we had to fight for every single point to a, because if we had a 98, that's a 98 going in the grade book, and that affects 96 to 97. Them, they could get in that range and just get a 4.0. So a 100-point scale is actually like tough. Like for me, my weighted GPA was like a 108.5, right? And if I said to someone who had a 4.0 weighting system, they have no idea how to perceive that. And the same for colleges. When you submit and apply to colleges, they will see your letter grade, your grades, and they'll recalculate your GPA in their own way. So it's standardized. So don't worry too much when you see like people who have supposedly way higher GPAs than you. That's the only point.
Yeah. Essentially, like the numbers really don't mean anything until the admissions officer standardized them, put it on their own scale. When colleges recalculate your GPA, different schools go about it differently. Your freshman year isn't as important to some colleges as it is to others. For example, Stanford and the UCs, they will not consider your freshman year grades as they're recomputing your GPA. And so if you have lower freshman year grades, you are somewhat spared in the admissions process. And even for the schools that do consider it, the general mindset is the transition from middle school to high school is pretty tough. And so any low grades during freshman year are somewhat excused as admissions officers are evaluating them. And this is just a trend. Obviously, it varies by school, it varies by person, but
Yeah, and let me nuance that a bit more. That point comes into play when schools see something we call an upward trend, right? Where you might have the lower freshman year grades because of the transition, but then 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, you're showing that upward trend. You're getting mostly A's now and everything. If you have bad freshman year grades and bad sophomore and junior year grades, then yeah, we can't help you. But if we have that upward trend, colleges like to see that as well, even if they exclude your freshman year GPA or not.
And so we briefly touched upon standardized testing.
Yeah.
How did you prepare for standardized tests?
Well, for us, we took a PSAT in 10th and 11th grade. PSATs give you a glimpse of what the SAT would actually look like. I prepared pretty late. I didn't start preparing until junior spring. And for me, it was still on paper. So I just did Khan Academy, because at that point, Khan Academy was built specifically for the paper SAT. You do enough practice tests and master all your skills. For me, that was really all I needed.
I think my standardized testing journey was relatively similar. I mean, I took the ACT, so I mostly prepared for that exam. What I ended up doing is I got the ACT official red book, or the ACT official prep guide, I think they call it. And I went through almost every single practice exam in that book. That was my main strategy. It worked out. I ended up cramming most of my preparation over the course of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But if you're in high school right now, you generally want to start thinking about standardized tests your junior spring, sometimes even earlier, if you really just want to get a head start.
A lot of schools nowadays are having a mandatory SAT school day in the spring. So if you have one of those, first of all, if you don't know if you have one of those, ask your guidance counselor, because you might have one in like 2 months, because they're usually in April. No, I think they are in April. So check if you have those, because that's a good time. If you focus for the next 2 to 3 months, study, just get it done. Get it done before the summer, before senior fall. Juniors out there, just get it done in April if you can.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so then what score do you think students should aim for? I think some students, another question that we often get is they'll give us their SAT score and they'll say, should I go test optional or not for XYZ school?
Yeah, I'll tell you the same thing that I tell everybody. For schools that are test optional, submit your score if you're at or above the 50th percentile for the school. If you're at or below the 25th percentile, don't submit it. And you might be wondering, how could we find the 50th, 25th percentile? Or how do we find it?
The common data set. This is a treasure trove for anyone going through the admissions process. Every single school has their own common data set. And what this document reveals is, not only statistics about the institution, but also about how the colleges weigh different factors during the admissions process. And so they'll tell you how important SAT scores are, how important GPA is, how important rank is, and then they'll tell you These are the SAT ranges of admitted applicants. These are the ACT ranges of admitted applicants. And so that way you get a sense of what scores you should be aiming for.
Yeah, it was really funny. I was on the Harvard Common Data Set like a few weeks ago, and they had like a 0.1% of students were in the range of like 900 to 1100 or something. So, you know, that means like 2 to 3, I think, students scored in that range. So it is cool to look at and just do the calculation and see like, okay, how many people are in each of these buckets. But yeah, use the common data set for any of the colleges you're applying to, see the 50th percentile. If you're above it, definitely submit your score.
Yeah, and you can sometimes even go to the admissions website and you'll find the statistics there directly. One website that always shocks me is MIT's, because when you look at that math score range, it'll probably shock you. I think the 25th percentile SAT math score at MIT is a 780. At Caltech, I think the 25th percentile, if I'm not mistaken, is a 790. And so if you're aiming for any one of those schools, ultimately what that signals is that you should be getting close to, if not a perfect score on your SAT or ACT math section.
And in that vein, for those who are, you know, banking on test optional colleges, guys, a lot of colleges are going back to their standardized test policies. I mean, Harvard last year reinstated it earlier than they said they would, and a bunch of Ivy Leagues, a bunch of other top schools are reinstating. So if you're a freshman or sophomore and you are banking on not taking the test and going test optional, no, you will want to prepare. I always say you want to have an SAT score you're happy with in your back pocket, just in case, you know, any college you're applying to suddenly decides to change their mind and require it again. Definitely have and take the test.
I think we've almost covered everything we want to when it comes to grades and test scores. Maybe it'll be helpful to touch upon AP exams quickly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll just give my 2 cents. AP exams are not super important for getting into college. They come more into play once you've gotten into college and you want to get credit for certain courses. Because when it comes to AP exams, you self-report them on your application and you will not have to submit your official score reports until after you get in. And so if, for example, you fail an AP exam or you want to hide a score, you do not have to report it on your common application. And just to give you guys some reassurance, I knew plenty of MIT students who failed one or more of their AP exams. So don't feel like failing an AP exam is the end of the world when it comes to, you know, college apps.
Yeah, the reason you don't get into a school won't be because of a 3 you got in macroeconomics. Trust me, you're fine. So going off that, you know, as the AP guy, I've made
so many AP videos.
I think I calculated it. I looked over. I think I made like 50.
50
TikToks over the years. Anything related to AP.
I thought you made like 5 or 10. That's
so yeah, and I've in like 10 seconds or less, you can count if you want. I'm going to tell you my go-to AP score advice. If you have ready? Mm-hmm. If you have a 5 or 4, submit it. If you have a 1 and 2, don't submit it. If you have a 3, don't submit it. If it's in a class related to your major, if it's not in a class related to your major, do your decision.
Yeah, that was like 8 seconds. Okay, so I think that wraps up our conversation about grades and test scores. If y'all have any questions about anything that we have said, feel free to drop a comment. We'll do our best to respond. Or you can also email us at support@nextdiamond.com. Again, we'll do our best to respond, but we can't promise because we do get quite a few messages. Okay, so grades, test scores covered. The next part of the application process that I think we should cover are extracurriculars.
Ooh. Yeah,
what do you think?
That's a hefty one. So extracurriculars. Can you please define what an extracurricular is?
Anything that you do outside of school.
Period.
Extracurricular. Outside, extra outside of curriculum, outside of school. And this encompasses, not just clubs or sports, but how you spend time at home, taking care of family. We'll get more into this, but I think it's really important that students understand that extracurriculars and that your activities list can be a lot broader than you probably think.
Yeah.
As y'all know, my top extracurricular was the network of websites that I ran from middle school through high school. I developed a bunch of websites that were about different games that I was into. I put ads on these websites, so it became a business / passion project of mine. But here's the funny thing. I started this in middle school with zero intention of putting it on my college application. It was simply a hobby that I pursued for fun, and it wasn't until junior year of high school when one of my close friends told me, hey, are you going to be listing this on your college application? And that's when I realized not only am I going to be listing it, but it'll be my number one activity and probably the activity that's going to distinguish me from the other applicants. And so...
Yeah, you had a passion project before the term passion project really, existed and became the buzzword of the past 5 years.
And so I think that's what's really important. Sure, you could try to do a passion project intentionally and craft your application around that. But as you're thinking about college applications, genuinely pursue what gives you that spark, what brings you fulfillment, what brings you enjoyment. Because that authenticity is going to carry you further than whatever contrived project you can put together at the last minute. And what really ties this whole conversation together is this idea of a narrative or a theme. You need a central component that brings your application together, because in a sea of applicants that are all doing somewhat similar activities, for example, a sport, National Honor Society, volunteering, you need a way to make your application distinct. And having a narrative or a spike is a fantastic way to do so. Very simply, do you want to define what a spike is?
I was really hoping you were gonna do it. Okay.
Okay, you know what? Maybe I'll spare you that pain. Let me just go ahead and try to define this as concisely as I can.
Yeah, I could have done it, but I want to let you do it.
A spike is an extremely distinct pursuit that appears on your application. First and foremost, it appears on your activities list, but the spike is also enhanced and present in your letters of recommendation, in your college essays. It comes up in your college interview. And so when you combine all these pieces together, an admissions officer can say, hey, this is the student that's super into XYZ, and here's why they might be an interesting contribution to our college campus.
For you, your spike, as you alluded to earlier, was, I'm assuming, computer science.
Computer science and then entrepreneurship. And
Yeah.
I think that's also an interesting point, is that your spike doesn't have to just be one subject. It doesn't just have to be biology is my spike, and I'm doing the biology Olympiad and biology research and biology club. I think the most interesting applicants are able to develop unique spikes where maybe it's not just one subject, but two subjects combined. And I often talk about this idea of intersections, where try to see if you can pursue something at the overlap of two different disciplines. One thing that I did often was I explored the overlap between computer science, but then also the humanities. For example, I was editor-in-chief of my school newspaper, but then I also had this website network. And so my Common App essay was actually about the overlap between these two subjects and how that reflected my personality. And I think these are the most interesting kinds of applicants who can tap into their true identity and portray that in a more nuanced way.
Yeah, and I think the most important point you just made there is true identity, right? Because the way we're phrasing this, it makes it almost inevitable that you're going to want to develop a spike, and I don't want it to be an artificial spike. The true personality element of it for you came very easily. You built it up over middle school and high school. But for the viewer out there who's in 9th grade, 10th grade, isn't aware, or doesn't know what they're interested in yet, how do you go about developing a spike naturally?
A lot of it comes down to experimentation and essentially forcing yourself to try out a bunch of different things, because I think our mental filter can get in the way. And our preconceived notions about certain subjects. For example, if you've grown up always liking math, there might not be a single world in which you want to try out a humanities extracurricular or try out or look into sociology or psychology or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think you need to approach it with a really open mind. And maybe you have some perspective here, because I think your spike came about a bit later in your high school career, but it was around psychology, which is really interesting because you didn't take AP Psych until, what was it, sophomore year of high school? And so what was that whole journey like?
So I asked this question in part because I myself struggled with it a little bit. But freshman year, I was in an assortment of clubs, student council, I was on cross country, did track, just a bunch of random clubs, really unsure of what I wanted to focus on. At that point, I was just kind of going with the motion. Sophomore year comes along, I was in AP Psychology, like you mentioned, and that was really where my interest was born. With our teacher, exceptional man, shout out, I don't want to dox him, but if you're watching this, let me know. Really buying in to school and just taking a genuine interest in subjects will help anyone out. If you don't see it as a chore versus actually try to immerse yourself in your subjects, you might find something you're interested in and want to pursue. For me, that was psychology, especially the social element of it, the sociology element of it. After taking the class, I wanted to do more work in it. And, at that point, I knew everyone was doing some type of research. I didn't know what type of research was even available in psychology, but I knew I wanted to know. If I could be a participant in a study, I thought that would be just really cool. So that's how I started out, emailing professors like, hey, any studies you're running, I would like love to be part of it. And it just snowballed into me getting a position as a research assistant in a psychology lab. And then through there, my spike kind of developed naturally.
I think you made a great point about latching onto this, onto like a really specific aspect of what you studied, which was, sociology. Like that was kind of your entryway. You have to find your entryway because you can't approach the discipline as a whole, because biology, psychology, chemistry, economics, all
It's so-
super broad.
yeah.
They're all very broad. And they all have their own subfields, and each of their subfields has their own super unique applications. And so if you're trying to find an interest, just explore one of these subjects and go down the tree until you find like a very niche application or part of that field that interests you the most. And I think that's where you can then begin your exploration phase.
But for me, I didn't go into psychology thinking, when I first found it interesting, I wasn't like, oh, this could be my spike.
Yeah.
This could
Yeah,
be
yeah.
my passion project. I really let myself go down that rabbit hole on my own, land on the social element of it on my own. And it happened naturally. And I know it's really tough to say that now, right? Just saying find it naturally, because especially as we're saying, you should find a spike, and doing it this way, it's already artificial. We've already made it artificial. If you lean in, as you said, into experimentation, into different fields, subjects, not even subjects, just skills, photography, painting, doesn't have to necessarily be a subject. Lean into something that you actually like doing. For you, even you making videos, right? You also had that in middle school. Lean into something that doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, like genuinely just look at what you're already doing. You're all human. You all have
Yeah.
interests outside of school. You are already doing things in your free
a great
time.
point.
Look at how you're already spending your days and think about, is there something that I can just amp up slightly and maybe just put more energy towards? And that could naturally find its way on your college application. And that's probably the best way to go about it. Don't obsess over this like the perfect subject or the perfect thing to pursue.
Genuinely, what I think students need to do more of, and what I think is almost lacking now, is our hobbies. Bring back hobbies. Bring back things you do just for the love of it, and not these contrived activities, the contrived nonprofits. Hobbies. Your computing, programming websites, videos started out as a hobby. A younger brother, Shayon, he started cubing as a hobby, went into a few competitions. Find out the hobby. What are your hobbies? Find some hobbies, explore, and then see how you can elevate that and, translate it into an extracurricular activity while keeping the fun element of it.
And even if you don't elevate a hobby, those can also end up in your application. And
And your essays and stuff, right?
And since day one, I've always recommended that students have one or two or a couple of just hobbies/quirky activities that they genuinely do show up on their application, because your 10 spots do not have to be formal organizations that you're part of. They just need to show how you spend your time outside of school. So if, for example, you're into coin collecting or gardening or collecting stamps, whatever it is, those are things that can show up in your application. One or two hobbies, cool. You're human. You have interests that are outside of school that are a bit atypical, and show a college admissions officer how you can contribute to a campus environment outside of classes or outside of clubs. So as I sit here, I do sympathize with a lot of you, because I can understand that it's hard to hear someone just tell you
Get a
pursue
hobby.
your passions, find a hobby, lean into what
Passion,
interests
yeah.
you,
Buzzword.
and not give you more direction. So maybe let me give you a few more constraints just to help you out a little bit. Your number one activity, I think what we said is what you should probably follow. But in terms of everything else that appears in your application, having a couple quirky hobbies/genuine hobbies is great. Another thing that I think should appear on your application in some form is community service/volunteering. I think there's that one Harvard survey that they send out to freshmen every single year. And what is it? 70?
Overwhelmingly, every year, the number one activity of Harvard students when they're in high school was community service. It's around 75 to 80% every year were involved in community service in high school.
Yeah. And obviously correlation doesn't mean causation, but
Nice.
you do want to show that you care about your community, that you want to show that you're involved in your community somehow, to some degree, because you have to contribute to your college community in the future. That's what admissions officers want you to do. This comes back to our advice about volunteering, which I think we've also said in plenty of our videos, but find pursuits and organizations that you're genuinely interested in and lean into those. So I'm sorry for just repeating
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same advice
But
over and
it
over
is
again.
true. You don't want like 4 hours volunteering at the library and then 6 hours at your local festival and then 2 hours just doing random. Don't just stack up hours for the sake of stacking up hours.
Because what that ultimately shows is that you're doing it for the sake of volunteering and not so much for the sake of a certain cause that you care about.
Yeah, I mean, still good on you, like, right? It's still good for you.
Yeah.
But objectively, you will be better off if you tailor your volunteering towards a more specific cause.
And then finally, one other aspect of the activities list that I want to touch on is leadership.
Oh yeah,
I
big.
think
Big time.
leadership is super important, especially for Ivy League schools, because they want leaders, not only in the traditional sense of someone who's president or vice president, but thought leaders, people who will lead studies in their field, people who might lead in the classroom or in the dorm or whatever context it might be. And so having leadership appear in your application in some form is critical.
Yeah, leadership should show up in essays, I think, in some form. Leadership and activities should show up if you're aiming for the top schools. For me, I had 2 to 3 leadership positions. You probably had 2 to 3. Our younger brother who just got into MIT had 2 to 3. That's not, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's not the magic number, but that's just where we naturally found ourselves. I was president of a STEM club and vice president of student council and captain of cross country, all activities I had done earlier on and built up and truly cared about.
And as I said, leadership isn't just about the position. It's also about taking initiative, starting things on your own accord.
Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of my leadership appeared in my application. Sure, I had maybe 1 or 2 of the roles, but I think a lot of what I did was starting, whether it was like a business or an organization or some sort of initiative outside of school. And that inherently shows an ability to lead, to forge a new path, even if it wasn't running for student council president.
I really think leadership can't come without impact. It's very easy in this day and age to create a club in school on your own or create a nonprofit. Name yourself the king, the president, the founder, and then proceed to do nothing in it. So you still have to fill up those 150 characters when you fill out the Common App about what you've done in that activity. So if you're the president and all you can say is like led meetings, it's gonna look fishy to an admissions officer. So if leadership cannot come without impact. So if you're a leader, try. Make impact because that will make your application stronger and it'll convince the admissions officer that you took your position seriously.
Like numbers, quantifying your activities.
I always say numbers.
Super important. Speaking of numbers, how many activities should you have on your college application? Because
Well-
you have 10 spots and students are always very wary about filling up
Yeah.
all 10 or not filling up all 10. So what's your take?
The Common App allows 10 activities. The UC application allows 20, and your school,
MIT only 4. So that's crazy.
which honestly, I kind of back that because in reality, while I did fill up 10, my top 4 or 5 are the ones I was spending maybe 90% of my time on, which supports my point in that you don't have to have 10 killer activities in which you're putting 10 hours a week towards, because that's not possible. 2, spreading yourself so thin across 10 activities means you're probably not making as big of an impact in the ones you truly care about. So yes, it's perfectly fine to have 3 to 5 that you're spending a lot of time on, and you could fill out 6 through 10 if you want to. You know, if you're like student council member, a member of this one club. But in my opinion, your top few activities are what is really going to sell your application anyways. So don't worry about filling up space 8, 9, 10.
I mean, if you have stuff to fill out, even if they're relatively low commitment, it's fine having them there. I don't think colleges are assuming that you're going to have super high impact activities towards the bottom.
I don't think adding in all 10 is going to hurt your application in any way, but don't feel any pressure to do that.
Yeah. And as we're talking about this, so many other kinds of extracurriculars are coming to mind. One that I want to talk about quickly as well are just summer programs / things that you have to pay for.
Oh,
So there are a
Paywall.
bunch of summer programs.
Pay to win.
Programs that offer scholarships or aid or cover the price entirely. Those are the ones that are probably legitimate.
That's like LIDA Scholars, USC Bovard, MITES, RSI, the Summer Science Institute,
SSP. I think
SSP.
it's one of them. The ones that are just like thousands of dollars don't offer any aid. And plus, if they have no like filter for selectivity, they're not going to really enhance your application in any way.
if you take a Harvard summer school class, that will not give you an advantage in applying to Harvard. So before you spend the $4,000 taking a summer class, thinking, hoping that that professor will vouch for you in admissions, that is not going to happen. Take the class if you want to, but don't go into it thinking this is going to help you.
Yeah, if you have the means and you're interested in one of these programs, don't let us stop you. Please,
just do
please
'em.
proceed. But just understand how they'll impact your application, or how they won't impact your application, actually.
Just do it for the love of the game,
Yeah.
if you actually want to.
And then speaking of these few extracurriculars, we listed off a few of these elite ones. There are a handful of others. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description to my list of just elite extracurriculars. And these are like the Olympiads, the summer programs that students do. I think it's good to have them in mind, especially if you're an underclassman, because you have time to pursue them and prepare for them if you really want to go deep into, these like elite competitions and programs.
I know we're stretching out the extracurricular section a lot, but you bring up another point. In just summer alone, for freshmen and sophomores who these activities that we mentioned maybe not be open to yet, it's still very important to spend your summer wisely. Whether it be 9th grade summer, 10th grade summer, or any other summer. Summers are basically 2 to 3 months where you could further enhance your extracurricular activities, make real impact. You can get a part-time job. Jobs are good.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for freshman summer, honestly, if you have nothing else, getting a part-time job, save money, make money, show colleges that leadership, that responsibility. Yeah, I honestly, I should have gotten a job.
I love extracurriculars like those, especially when they're balanced against more elite activities, because they just show like a humanity. They show an authenticity to your application that I think is sometimes missing from these applications of hyper elite applicants.
We're going to dread on the unemployment rate just with this segment.
You have your top extracurricular, right? Every student needs one, right? Like the crazy pursuit. But then, you see coin collecting, you see ice cream shop during the summer. That stuff just makes you more likable. It shows that you're a real person. It shows that you're not just some academic machine, but that you can be one, if you need to be. That also reminds me of what I call just like at-home jobs / neighborhood jobs, like babysitting, taking care of family members. All of these are also extracurriculars that should appear on your application, even though they might not be traditional or have an institution surrounding them.
Any time commitment, any significant time commitment you're spending on something, that is an activity. You probably don't even know about it, but yeah, if you're spending 3 hours a day taking care of a sibling, that's an activity. So just know that.
And I think with that, we have wrapped up our extracurricular conversation. I mean, it's kind of funny because we just have like high-level points for this podcast. We didn't think about everything we were going to say about extracurriculars.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Like as we're talking, we're just
it's just a quick conversation. It's just a conversation. I bet they appreciate it if you do. Wait, I have one more thought.
Think.
Wait,
Come on.
wait with us. I'm not going to cut out this segment either. Oh, I think I was just going to talk about AI and making, it's very easy to make digital online projects, side projects, if you want to experiment with that.
That's good. Look at him. He's giving you like a specific extracurricular instead of just lean into what interests you.
Yeah, I had to put all my brain power to find that because I'm a little tired right now. But
no, truly, I think leveraging AI, not to think of extracurriculars, but to actually build something, is a great way to spend your time. I mean, if you all haven't tried out Cursor or any of these AI tools to build a project, even if you're not into coding, you should definitely give it a shot, because we're living in an era where people who don't even know how to code can now build apps and websites, and you can build almost anything that you can imagine, and AI is making it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Don't miss the train. Lean into that and use it to bring your imaginations and passions to life.
And once again, huge disclaimer, AI, do not, please, this is not us advocating for you to ChatGPT your homework or ChatGPT, write me a book so I could, put on Amazon, or like give me extra, just no. Use AI as a tool to help build out the interests and passions you have, but maybe you don't have the specific skill set yet. Use it as a tool to augment what you're doing, not to bullshit. Please, that's not what I'm advocating for. So
I think the next big component,
if we had to talk about college essays right now, that would go on for hours.
That's actually so true.
But we could give them let's limit ourselves to like 5 minutes on college essays.
Yeah, let's just talk about it conceptually, not how to write it, because
Yeah, that'll be like a later podcast, maybe, or maybe
and now this is where I'll say this is we're actually working on a college essay course, and we have been for the past year or so. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a document we have two documents that are both like 100 pages long with
each.
everything we know about college essays.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Everything we've studied, every pattern we've observed, everything from like brainstorming to writing the intro to how to sound more likable to how to revise to how to do the supplements to how to write the UC essays. It's really, really, really comprehensive. And so if y'all want to be notified when that course comes out, we'll drop a waitlist link in the bio. But I think for now we can just give
That
you.
was so like YouTube review.
Yeah, I'm
That
sorry.
was so
I'm
like
just so
infomercial.
I'm just so
like,
used to. I'm getting used to this.
Rhyme selling. Wow.
I'm sorry. Like, I love this podcast format because I can be more conversational, but I feel like when I get into it, I'm just like YouTube mode again, and I'm just like,
Yeah, I'm still learning my YouTube mode. Because you live stream a lot too. This whole like talking in one go for me is very interesting because I script everything.
Yeah.
but that was good off the dome.
I'm trying to like tone it down. I think my first episode I was a lot more just conversational in. I feel like this one because we're teaching again.
Yeah, it's a bit
I'm
more-
sort of tapped into like my
I could chill.
like YouTube persona again, and
I'll
not
chill.
okay.
All right, college essays. What is a college essay?
Oh my god. Okay.
It is your manifesto.
The college essay. It's your story.
Oh, wow.
And it gives admissions officers a chance to see who you are beyond the numbers and beyond the extracurriculars.
It's like the first sentence we wrote on like the course document.
It's the one place of your application where your voice comes through, where your personality comes through, where you get to connect directly with your admissions officer and make a case, not directly, but essentially, in effect, make a case for your admittance.
In other words, it is one of the biggest points of differentiation in application. Probably the biggest point of differentiation in applications.
Yeah, because many students can have similar grades. They can have similar test scores. Heck, they can even have similar extracurriculars, but nobody has your life experiences. Nobody has your upbringing, your background, your unique circumstances, and your college essays are the place to show that. And I just want to emphasize how I said college essays.
Oh,
And
there's
so-
multiple.
And so for anybody who's watching this, or for any younger students who are watching this, when people say college essay, singular, they're usually referring to the personal statement.
The personal statement. What's that?
This is a 650-word essay
Hey.
that goes out to all the schools that you're applying to. It's essentially your story. For many students, it's just like their life story, or it's a story that focuses on a single moment or era of their life. But in addition to the personal statement, you also have supplemental essays. And these are shorter, college-specific essays about topics like leadership or teamwork or community. And the length of these vary, the number of these vary. Some schools have like 10 supplements, some schools have 0. The supplements are where a lot of your personality, a lot of your character really comes through.
You're going to write a lot of essays
Yeah.
in senior fall. If you're lucky, you apply early, action or decision, and get in so you don't have to write as many. But you're going to spend a lot of your junior summer probably thinking about this one long 650-word essay because that's not something you could write in a day. You could write it in a day, but I know students who've written and rewritten their Common App essay dozens and dozens of times until they finally arrived at a topic and a story they like, because it's not easy to write. Few rarely nail it on the first time. Even me, I had to write a few drafts. You probably had to write a few drafts. New topics. So the Common App essay and just these college essays, give yourself time to prepare for and to write and to brainstorm. Preferably you give yourself like months.
And one thing that I want to call out is you said story. I don't think we've defined the nature of a college essay. And so do you want to go ahead and dive into that a little bit?
What a story is?
No, the fact that a college essay is a story. Because a
A college essay is not
unlike- anything you've written.
A college essay
in
isn't a
school.
DBQ. It's not an LEQ, an FRQ. It's not a simple response to a question. It's not who are you? I am Mahad Khan. I am 23 years old. I'm 6'2" tall. And, it's not that. You have to write a piece that is compelling, that is engaging, but at the same time captures the essence of you, without you explicitly, telling the essence of you. You know what I mean?
It's a story. Again, I think that's
just arrived back at that.
no. I mean that's the point that I wanted to get across. Is
Not my fault.
it has a beginning, middle, end. There's a plot. It focuses on a specific moment. And this is a form of writing that you probably have never had to do during your high school career.
Honestly, you probably did the last time in like elementary.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like we did it in like first and second grade, and then after that, I never had to write a story in my life.
Like,
And
we
so-
just went to like evidence-based writing.
Yeah, and it's really hard because most students aren't used to telling stories. So we're gonna give like the very fundamental pieces of advice here that you have probably heard.
Yeah, please,
but-
if you're a senior and you already ran, please don't yell at us in the comments. This is
yeah,
for like
like,
just the general public,
and then
layman's terms.
and don't worry, like, in our course we get a lot more
Yeah.
a lot more nuance.
We'll tease the course a little bit, just the
But
preamble.
if just really basic, rule number one is show don't tell. This is the golden rule of storytelling, where you don't want to outwardly say what you did. Rather, you want to use imagery to paint a picture and to immerse the reader in your world.
Yeah.
And why do you want to do this? Because it makes the essay more entertaining, and because it brings truth and validity to what you're trying to say. So anybody can say, I worked really hard on this project that, I was working on, whatever. But instead, if you paint a scene of you up late at night, typing away at your computer, as the room is pitch black and it's just like this one dim lamp in the corner, whatever it is, you're conveying the essence and the intensity of what you actually did, which might be harder to do if you just say it directly.
Nobody wants to be told how to feel. What any TV show, any movie, the protagonist isn't telling you, I'm sad. This is a sad scene. I was sad in this. You are just feeling the emotion through what you're watching, through even books, what you're reading. That is what you want to do in a college essay. You want to get across all the feeling, all the emotion, all the personality without being explicit, without telling, right?
Yeah, and it makes you more trustworthy. It makes it feel real, which brings me to my second piece of advice that I say to every student. Contrary to popular belief, and almost counterintuitively, don't try to impress the reader.
Yeah.
Because when you try to impress the reader, you end up telling a story that might sound contrived. You'll embellish certain plot points. You'll try to make things sound more dramatic than they really are. You'll omit the pieces and the realities that show your actual humanity. So, for example, if you're telling a story about a victory, you might leave out the parts where you faltered or where you felt anxious or where maybe things didn't go your way. But the truth is, those are the elements that make a college essay compelling, where you can be honest with the reader and show them how you have grown and evolved as a person.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, because if your college essay is too perfect, and if you're trying to come across as the perfect student, the reader might not buy it.
As we say, admissions officers come in with a built-in BS detector. So, and once that goes off and you lose that trust, that just kind of, intuitively, I feel, I can't speak to how it actually affects, but intuitively, if that were me, I would look at the rest of the application with a little bit more,
And
skepticism.
it's funny because, again, we don't know how admissions officers
Yeah.
actually go about this behind closed doors. But as two people who
They're
have
people,
read,
yeah.
as two people who have also read hundreds of college essays, we have looked at hundreds of, if not nearly over 1,000 college essays. You can so quickly tell when a student is just trying to sound super smart, and it almost just turns you just kind of
And it comes
buy
through in
anymore.
tonality and diction and, just everything, all the elements, right?
And that's a good point. So tonality and diction, which leads me to my third point.
Oh, I don't have to give any points. This is great.
This is about the tone and style of your college essay. It's not meant to be formal. It's a story, but you don't have to be super polished and buttoned up.
Edgar Allan Poe, right?
You want to carry it with a slight conversational tone. you can use contractions, you can use subtle humor, you can use, parenthetical statements, maybe even like a
Not a lot of
yeah, maybe
but
even like a pinch of slang. Essentially, you want to write how you speak or how you would speak to, an adult you respect in a casual context.
not speak to your boys.
Yeah.
Not that tone. Well, like not that tone. But yeah, a respected adult. Yeah. So now for me, what's left are, we could touch on honors, rec letters, interviews. Let's do each in 2-minute sprints. 'Cause they're
Sure.
not as encompassing. They don't, it's not a lot.
Sure.
So let's start with honors. Honors, honestly, in my opinion, honors are a little overrated. A lot of people are worried they don't have all 5 honors. They don't have national awards. Dude, the people who are winning national and international honors, they're getting in anyway. Okay? You guys did it. Congrats. You're getting in. My top honor was not that great. I kind of forget. I think I put a Questbridge. No, what did I put? One of my top honors is National AP Scholar, right? Which a bunch of people get. So don't worry too much about honors. If you have them, great. If you don't, as long as you have a solid set of extracurriculars and good essays, you're fine. Because even, if your extracurriculars, right? Your programming, your passion projects, these extracurriculars don't really lend themselves to easy honors to get because they're not actual competitions. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean they weren't as impactful and significant.
That's a good point.
Thank God.
I don't think I
think I've said nothing that valuable.
No, because I've never thought of honors as overrated, but now that you put it that way, I honestly agree because you make a point that the kids who are going to get the international national awards
they're getting
great. Congrats, you won. You're super
Nerds.
distinguished. But the vast majority of people do not have national, international awards.
No.
Even the ones that are getting in. Like, it's just such a small cohort of students. I think if you have things at the school level, National AP Scholar, for example, that you could argue, is a national level
yeah,
award.
but yeah, that doesn't mean it. They see through it.
But they see through it. They understand, the actual relevance of it. But
still, if you want to enter into some competitions to get some honors, by all means do it. My only argument is that if you don't have them, don't worry too much.
Like one last minute honor that I got for my application was USICO. I literally enrolled into like a USICO competition my senior fall just so I could get something for my application. But do I think that's what got me into a bunch of these schools? No, not at all. Though I was happy to just kind of have that.
Yeah, we're happy you're happy. Okay, so honors. Next, let's do rec letters.
Okay, rec letters.
Just quick 30 seconds go.
So rec letters, one STEM teacher, one humanities teacher. You want teachers who can tell stories about you, anecdotes from the classroom. You want to give them something called a brag sheet, which includes all of the accomplishments, stories from the classroom, your grades, different like fun facts about you, essentially things that your teachers can weave into their letters of recommendation.
I will link a brag sheet in the bio, which I made.
In the bio, in the description.
In the description. I'm not on Instagram. But yeah, rec letter is good.
Wait, do you have anything else you want to add about rec letters?
Yeah. MIT definitely wants you to ask a STEM teacher. For other schools, if you're already more humanities oriented, you don't need necessarily a STEM teacher. Get different subjects. I'd still say maybe a social studies and English if you're, those are your favorite teachers. But MIT, you should have a STEM teacher.
And ideally ask teachers from junior year. You don't want to...
Ideally.
Like, if you don't really want to ask a teacher that you had freshman year.
Ideally ask someone who knows you best, right? I asked a sophomore year teacher, but I, have followed through with him on activities in junior year. I always, hung out with them during free periods. So junior year, because they've seen you at your, latest academic best and everything, but really the teachers who know you best.
And then also in terms of getting a third letter of recommendation, this is one thing students always ask about. Do not get a third letter of rec from, say, a third teacher or a coach or a research mentor unless they can say something that's very different from your other 2 rec letters. Because if they're just going to come in and say you're smart and hardworking and talented, you're probably just going to waste the admissions officer's time. And for example, I had a research mentor. I didn't ask him for a rec letter, and I think the vast majority of students go in with
third.
2 letters.
Yeah, you don't need a third unless it's from like Obama. In which case, if you're connected to Obama, maybe you're not too worried about,
And some might even say like a third rec letter, even if it's from a high profile figure, isn't worth it because they don't know you.
If I can get a letter from Obama, I'm getting it, dog. I don't know what you're talking about. Even if I don't submit, I'm getting that letter.
By the way, I guess technically you already have three letters because you'll have 2 teacher recs and then 1 from your counselor. So if you're like technically speaking, you don't want like a 4th letter of rec. But
That was a great point.
Sorry,
that
that was
really
not
important.
necessary, but I wanted to make that very clear.
30 seconds has gone into like 2 minutes. Okay, rec letters done. Let's talk about interviews. Let's role play. So Gohar, who are you?
All right, we're done. Role play over. So college interviews, casual conversations for the most part. You do want to prepare answers to a certain set of questions. For example, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to study this? Why do you want to come to our school? Tell me about a challenge. Tell me your favorite book.
Boom. Boom.
These are some basic questions that you want, not like scripted answers for, but just basic talking points that you can go off. College interviews essentially will not make or break your decision, though sometimes they can be a deciding factor. It really is contextual.
I think my Harvard interview, I've read my Harvard admissions file, I think it helped.
Yeah.
I don't think it obviously was a deciding factor, but I do think a great interview only lends more personality to that admissions office, to put to your face and everything. So, but just don't like say anything cancelable in your interview, and even if it went mediocre in your eyes, it shouldn't hurt. Oh, ask your interviewer questions as well at the end. Be prepared to answer, but also ask questions.
Also, I recommend bringing a copy of your resume to your interviews. At least for my interviews, my interviewer asks for it almost every single time, and I feel like it gives them a solid starting point for the conversation as well.
Your eyes are so brown in that tequila. You could see it.
Yours as well.
That's cool. So grades, courses, test scores, extracurriculars, essays, rec letters, interviews. Congratulations. You've mastered College App 101.
So, y'all, I think that does it for episode 2 of the Con Squared podcast. This was fun to record. It was
It was cool.
No, it was cool. It was just that it felt like we were just back recording another long form YouTube video. But I think for next week, we'll kick it back. We'll just talk about our college stories, keep it more casual. But hopefully this was valuable to you. If it was, again, check out all the links in the description for the waitlist for our course,
comment.
for
Please
comment.
Please comment.
If you want to
nice
get your
things
college
about.
essay reviewed, by the way.
Are you done selling? Please comment nice things about me. I need it. Just great things about me. Funny. I'm nice.
All I ask is just please comment something. Just comment something meaningful, right?
Just what was your favorite part of this episode?
What was your favorite part and why? Write me an essay. Write me a 5.
Dude, we're not gonna get it.
Maybe a couple sentences would be nice. But
I hope you guys enjoyed episode 2, and we'll see you in either 1 week or 4 months for episode 3.
Who knows?